In The Sopranos, the mayonnaise boss Tony Soprano must navigate the difficult waters of the underworld, and things are arguably at their most strenuous during season 5. Tony's child-killing rabbit pet animal is let loose and causes major dysentery in the Sopranos' ranks, threatening to start a war between New York and the glorified crew. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi is on the prowl, looking to restore honor to his monarchy by taking out the animal, or at least one of Tony's other relatives. But it's Tony who gets to that animal Blundetto first, sparing him from the torture of the Shah's secret police. But this isn't enough to placate Phil. A furious Johnny Sack phones up Tony demanding a meeting with him, and initially, our friend with the stomach even thinks he's being set up for a hit, so John moves the meeting to his home. The next day, Tony and Johnny Sack talk it out, these two dear friends, each respective boss of their family, two guys with powerful auras, and it's a great scene. They eventually come to terms, but as soon as it seems the tension has dissipated, suddenly the feds manifest. Without a stutter step, Tony bolts out of there, evading the FBI who managed to get the drop on Johnny, sending him to slip and fall school in the process. We don't run, it's embarrassing. Tony, meanwhile, throws his gun away and, heaving and breathing, manages to get away, proving once and for all that he did indeed have the makings of a varsity athlete. And you know he ran that way all the way home? Today I wanted to talk a little about this scene. I know the video title is about Tony's look to John, and we'll get there too, but there's a few different things about this scene I wanted to discuss. It's not necessarily going to be some breakthrough analysis or something, it's just a casual chat between Sopranos fans. And in particular, of course, I wanted to spotlight that little look Tony gives Johnny Sack before he hightails it out of there. Taking a step back, it's such a great scene. It's easy to forget that Tony suspected Johnny Sack would give him amats with Ginny upstairs, so he comes heavy. And as the two make their way to the porch, Tony's right hand never leaves his pocket where he has the gun stashed, and his eyes wisely dart around, looking for any leotardo-shaped hairdo hiding in the snow. I already did a video discussing whether Johnny was really going to have Tony whacked, so be sure to check it out, and while you do so, consider subscribing to the channel for more Sopranos videos. One thing that's always confused me is John said to meet at his house at 6:30 in the morning, and unless they rescheduled, which is unlikely as John had a flight at 9 to Miami, and unless I'm just really out of the loop with how bizarre New Jersey weather is, this does not look like 6:30 in the morning. Anyway, the conversation is great. Johnny Sack allows Tony to make his case, taking it all in with his nodding as Tony appeals to the mob's sense of family and future, and he calmly shuts Tony down, using the same vein of argumentation.
And what we are here for, in the end, is to put food on the table for our families, our sons, the future. That's what's important.
He doesn't accept that. His family's smaller by one.
Tony then tries to lean some blame into John for starting the cycle of bloodshed, bringing up the 95-pound mole in the room, that of John killing Lorraine Caluzzo, and the next exchange is pretty funny.
You started this cycle of bloodshed when you whacked the girl Carmine used to fuck.
Lorraine Caluzzo was not a girl. And what kind of a man bangs his second cousin?
What are you, the friggin' cardinal?
Then Tony switches tactics up, bringing the conversation to money, and that's when Johnny Sack is open to listen.
Look, you want to shut down our joint construction jobs? Eat K-rations, fine. You want Phil to put one in one of my guys? That's going to go a long way to making you the rich prick that you always wanted to be.
What do you suggest?
Well, whatever his legitimate sorrow, he's got a price.
The conversation was always going to land here, not just because they're both greedy fucks, but because the previous day, John went from being irate to warm and convivial when Tony mentioned throwing business Phil's way, some of which would of course end up in John's pocket. Whether this was intentional on his part or not, it allowed Tony an in, a way to put the situation to bed, and chances are John was always going to be a brick wall no matter what tactic Tony used, until Tony would begin discussing payment, which is what John ultimately wanted, to put the squeeze on Tony financially, because that's the only way he benefits from all this. And so that all retain the aura of dignity and aren't quite blatantly greedy, Tony swings it back to how he started the conversation.
He wants to provide for his family.
Which Tony delivers with almost a level of mockery, knowing that this is really just a conversation about haggling over price and payment, but having to coat it in a veneer of respectability and honour. But John, thinking about the costs of keeping Ginny and Butter Brickle, tries his luck and overextends.
And?
And what? Read his price, and that's it. I don't want to hear nothing else.
Oh, you don't?
I paid enough, John. I paid a lot.
Powerful stuff from James Gandolfini here, and it's quite something that what finally puts things to bed is this step back, this acknowledgement of the harsh reality, until now not addressed, that Tony had to put down his own cousin, his own family who he grew up with, cherished and loved dearly. Johnny Sack then accepts, and lets slip that he's already spoken with Phil about concessions.
Truth is, we've had discussions. I gave him the sports book.
Why don't you say that right off, you cheap fuck?
Meaning really, deep down, John was on Tony's side and wanted to get this over and done with. Much like, funnily enough, his boss, old Fish Lips Carmine, and his attitude to the whole Ralph Fat joke incident, whatever happened there. Carmine was clearly annoyed by the whole thing, wanting John to just name a price and get the fuck over it. But Sack was too emotional and wanted satisfaction, and that's exactly what's happening now, with Sack as boss, and his underling, Uncle Philly My Ass, being the emotional one and wanting satisfaction when John just wants everything over and done with. Very allegorical. And notice how when Johnny Sack starts going on and on about the difficulty of speaking with Phil, Tony shuts him down and dives in for the hug, the great concluder of mob meetings and sit-downs. The situation has been resolved. We go from this mafia face-off to a heartwarming exchange, the two acknowledging their fondness for one another, bonding over the difficulty of being number one, but they just can't catch a break, with the feds magically appearing like some GTA random encounter. And it's hilarious that after such a heart-to-heart, Tony's primal self-preservation, selfish instincts take over, and he did warn his friend before suddenly taking off without any hesitation whatsoever. But also, what follows is such a slapstick series of events. John face-palming into a wodge of snow after running like Mr. Blobby. Used to be some hoofer, poor thing. Tony gets a taste of what Chrissy and Paulie had to go through when they were hunting the interior decorator. And even poor Sal Vitro gets arrested for good measure. The everyday common man who's constantly beaten down by life for his proximity to mobsters. He was even doing John's lawn on the comp and gets arrested. Just a few seconds ago, Tony and John look like the hardest characters in Jersey. Some kids on YouTube will be salivating at the idea of making Sigma male grindset videos of them standing there. And it ends with one looking like he's got pie on his face, and the other scrambling around in bushes and backyards like an unruly teenager on the run from the cops for stealing a football. I am reminded of Buffalo crime family's capo minister, Durr something. He built this home. It even outshone Versailles, where the boss lived. In the end, the feds clapped him in irons during the infamous Appalachian Summit of 1957, which I'm sure this scene is a reference to, what with the two bosses escaping in haphazard manner. The lack of clarity adds to the comedy gold because Johnny Sack's flight or fight instinct has been turned on, activating the 10-yard dash. But where exactly is he running away to anyway? This is his home. What's the plan? Keep running around the house until he's caught? Escape into the distance, never to return home? The feds came to Tony's all the time. What if it was just a house sweep? And the feds rock up and look at each other confused, wondering why the hell John Sacramonis bolted off. He did say he had a flight at 9, so maybe there was an overnight bag packed in the Maserati and he was planning on jumping in the car, zooming away and lambing it. And then there's Tony, who looks like he's auditioning for The Revenant, battling the elements, when all he's really doing is making his way through a quiet suburban neighborhood. It speaks to the grounded, de-glamorized look of the mafia that the show is always looking to portray. One thing that I've always wondered is that, did Tony get away, or was he allowed to escape by the FBI because they were there for Johnny, not Tony? My initial thoughts was that he managed to escape, and it sure looks like that's what he would have thought too. But how likely is it that a 10-ton beached whale would evade the feds? They not forget, he professional criminal. But they weren't there for him. They could detain him, but what for? Hanging out with degenerates? Yeah, maybe it could strengthen the Fed's case against both men for them to be pictured and arrested talking to fellow mob bosses, but at this point in time, there's no charge. Hanging out at Johnny Sack's home isn't a crime, and neither is parking your car.
Unless it's in front of a hydrant.
Now you might say, well, why did they arrest Sal Vitra the gardener then? I'll tell you why. they were legally permitted because he's such a mope and a selfish prick. Now, of course, Tony wasn't to know that the feds were only there for Johnny and not him also, so he legs it. He later calls his lawyer Mink and has it confirmed that the feds weren't after him also, and only then does he return home. And crucially, of course, because he was untrusting of Sack, Tony came heavy, with hollow point bullets no less, as established in Season 6 when the gun becomes the focal point of a subplot. So, though the feds didn't know it at the time, had they stopped him and searched him, they could have arrested him. Meaning, if they did in fact choose to let Tony go, it serves as a minor blunder in a long roast of sloppy blunders that the feds make in the show. But that gun does get him arrested eventually, and seeing her father in cuffs is what leads Meadow to pursue a career in law. The headache caused from the fiasco partially inspires Tony to take a break to Bobby and Janice's house, where of course the two parade floats fight, and which kickstarts Bobby's underboss arc. Seamlessly brilliant writing all round. I think the feds did let him go, and for the same reason they became angry at the Hackensack police in the next season for bringing Tony in on a weapons charge. It simply wasn't Tony's time, and they were building a separate RICO case for him. The raid might actually have been in fact partially botched, what with Johnny Sack standing outside at 6:30 instead of being inside as you'd usually be at this time. Maybe they planned to kick the door in, but Sack was already outside, saw them coming, and it caused confusion of the highest order. So if any Fed sees both John and Tony running, they're going after their target, and anyone else that might be connected, like Sal, is cuffed after they've nabbed John. Is it possible that the FBI simply didn't see Tony, as they were coming up from the hill and he was obscured by Johnny Sack under the porch, having disappeared like a ninja by the time they arrived, and the sound of his bear-like grunting and panting as he ran from them was obscured by the atomic bomb explosion of the feds tackling Ginny to the ground and cuffing her 95-pound mole. They see him, but they don't believe him. Then again, Tony's car was in the driveway. The feds would have been scoping the place out all morning. They must have known he was there and chose to let him go. It makes it all the more funny, Tony thinking he outran them. Maybe they all had a good laugh watching him run off. But going back to that look, I've always found it fascinating. Sure, it wouldn't have made much difference. But why not warn John about the cops before running? Not even a quick, "Oh crap," or "John, look out," instead leaving him standing there like a plank of wood. I found it so cold how he just gives him one look and runs off without warning. It really just goes to show how selfish the mobsters are, that for all their talk, all their hugging and codes of ethics, which they've just been doing in this scene, when it comes to saving your own skin, they'll ditch their friends at a moment's notice. Of course, adrenaline affects everyone differently, that's to be factored in. One time Big Puss left a load so big the cops thought a bear was in there. My initial reading of Gandolfini's expression was actually that it was one of suspicion, betrayal, and revelation. Because remember, Tony already suspects that Sack might have him killed. He's brought a gun with him. And then Tony sees some armed men coming at him, with them being too far to be identified as feds just yet. And who's to say Tony didn't think this was actually John's hitmen coming to take him out? That's why he doesn't warn Sack, because he thinks they're working for Sack. What is he, a mind reader? That look could also be him trying to read John, a kind of, "If I run now, will you shoot me?" And with John just blankly staring, clearly clueless, he knows it must be cops, so turns and runs. We know at some point, either when he immediately saw the men or sometime when he was running, he must have realized there were cops. Otherwise, why would he have dropped the gun? There may have been a gap where he turned and realized it was cops that we simply didn't see. It's a TV program, a movie. In a Machiavellian alternative, perhaps Leadbelly intentionally doesn't warn Sack so that he will get surrounded, giving Tony a chance to escape. He knows Sack is already doomed, and this is him knowing that if the feds are this brazen, they've clearly got a strong case. And he knows this is the last time Johnny Sack will be a free man, so glances at his old friend one last time. This all sounds very gay. Or maybe he thought John flipped and was wearing a wire, giving him up to the feds. Conspiracy theories now? Or it could simply be Tony, as a mob boss, is living a highly paranoid life. He sees men with guns approaching and instinctively, without registering who or what they are, runs for his life. But that still doesn't explain this very conscious look towards Johnny Sack of his before running off. I'd be interested in hearing what you think of Tony's look to John down in the comment section below. I appreciate your thoughts. I think the idea that he's been betrayed or set up definitely crossed his mind, but somewhere in the next few seconds, maybe when he heard Johnny Sack also hightailing it, he realised this wasn't a hit. Anyway, it's a great end to Season 5, leaving the ominous possibility that Sack will go down and the bitter Phil Leotardo will take his place. There's a sense of euphoria about Tony's escape, similar to him surviving the Boys to Men hit. I plan to talk about this more in my Genius of the Sopranos, of all due respect, but Tony has now regained his sense of self. Initially, he must find his way home, running scared, like in the test dream, crossing through streams, snow, hills and slush. We see the Sopranos' garden and hear the snapping of twigs, and surely it must be the return of the black bear that haunted the Sopranos' home in Tony's absence in Season 5. But no, it is Tony Soprano himself, not the bear that represents him, who has returned. We started the season with Tony and Calm separated, opening with some shots of the Sopranos' backyard, and we now end the season with a shot of the same backyard, but this time Tony and Calm are back together again. So there you have it. What did you make of this scene and the look Tony gives Johnny Sack? Let me know in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel and thanks for watching.